Ambassador Zorax of the Galactic Concord massaged his three-eye ridges as he reviewed the agenda for the upcoming Peace Summit. The 7th Multi-Species Peace Summit was less than 14 rotation cycles away, and as always, there was one persistent diplomatic headache: Earth. "They are doing it again," Zorax grumbled to his assistant, Plix, who was busily organizing scheduled tablets on the other side of the chamber. "The humans have submitted their delegation roster, and guess what? No military representatives. Again." Plix's antenna twitched in what Zorax had come to recognize as amusement. "Are you truly surprised, Ambassador? Earth has never sent military personnel to any summit. It's disrespectful." Zorax slammed a tentacle down on his hovering desk, causing several holographic documents to flicker. "Every other species in the Concord brings their highest military officials. It's tradition. It's protocol. It's expected. Perhaps they simply prefer civilian diplomacy," Plix suggested, straightening a stack of neural transmitters. "Nonsense. They are hiding something." Zorax narrowed his central eye. 6 peace summits over 18 galactic standard years, and not once have they brought a single military representative. Not one. "The humans do have unusual customs," Plix offered diplomatically. "Unusual? Try suspicious. Very suspicious." Zorax pulled up Earth's delegation list and projected it into the air. "Look at this. Ambassador Taya Jackson, 3 civilian diplomatic aides, 2 cultural attaches, 1 xenobiologist, and a catering consultant." "What in the 7 moons is a catering consultant?" Plix approached the projection. "I believe they advise on food preparation suitable for interspecies consumption." "That's just it. They always bring these random specialists, but never military." Zorax's skin flushed a deep purple with frustration. "The Vraxian Empire brings their war supreme. The Zetulian Confederation sends their entire defense council. Even the pacifistic Lumerians bring their lone security officer. But humans? Nothing." Zorax paced around his office, his 6 legs clicking nervously on the polished floor. "Something isn't right, Plix. I can feel it in my spiracles." "Perhaps they simply don't have a military?" Plix suggested. Zorax let out a barking laugh. "Don't be absurd. We have detected their vessels, their orbital platforms. We know they have weapons technology. Primitive compared to some, yes, but they have it." "Then what do you think they are hiding?" Zorax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." 3 days later, Zorax found himself in a secure communication chamber, waiting for his contact to respond. The chamber, designed for maximum privacy, hummed with electromagnetic dampeners that prevented any eavesdropping, electronic or biological. The holographic display finally flickered to life, revealing the amorphous form of Agent Krell, one of the Concord's most effective intelligence operatives. Krell's gelatinous body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, their species' form of expression. "Ambassador," Krell's translation unit produced a flat, artificial voice. "This is unexpected." "I need information, Krell." Discreetly. "Information is my currency." "What do you seek?" "Earth. Their military. Why don't they ever bring representatives to the peace summits?" Krell's body rippled with what might have been surprise or amusement. It was hard to tell with their species. "That's what you called me for?" "A question of human diplomatic preferences." "It's more than that," Zorax insisted. 6 summits. 0 military personnel. Every other species follows protocol. Only humans refuse. "Why?" Krell pulsed thoughtfully. "Have you considered simply asking them?" "Of course I have. Their Ambassador Jackson just smiles that infuriating human smile and says something about civilian oversight and democratic traditions. Non-answers. And interesting." Krell's form shifted into a more focused configuration. "I admit I hadn't considered the pattern. It is unusual. Will you look into it?" "I can make some inquiries." "Discreetly, as you said." "But Ambassador, what exactly do you suspect?" Zorax lowered his voice. despite the security measures. I don't know. Superior weaponry they don't want us to know about? Some kind of biological enhancement? Or perhaps something more sinister. Whatever it is, they have been hiding it for 18 years. Or perhaps it's nothing at all, Krell suggested, their form undulating skeptically. Then why the secrecy? Why break with protocol that every other species follows without question? I will see what I can discover, Krell conceded. But it will take time and resources. You will have both. Just get me answers before the summit. 1 week later, Zorax was startled by an urgent communication alert. He was in his private quarters, reviewing preparations for the upcoming summit when his security system announced an emergency override. Accept, Zorax commanded, surprised. You had the clearance for such an override. The holographic display materialized to show Krell, their form pulsing with rapid, erratic patterns that Zorax had never seen before. You need to stop, Krell said without preamble. Stop what? Zorax asked, confused. Your investigation. Into Earth's military. Stop immediately. Why? What did you find? Krell's form compressed anxiously. Nothing. I found nothing. And that's the problem. I don't understand. Ambassador, I accessed all available intelligence on Earth's military structure. Public records, classified Concord files, intercepted communications, everything. And denned. There's nothing unusual. They have a military. It's divided into branches. Army, Navy, something called Marines, Air Force, Space Force. Standard hierarchy. Standard weapons. Nothing extraordinary. Zorax felt his mandibles twitch with irritation. Then why contact me with such urgency? Why tell me to stop investigating? Because Krell pulsed with what Zorax now recognized as fear. Someone is investigating me, investigating them. What? Who? I don't know. 3 of my secure data nodes were compromised. 2 field agents stopped reporting. My primary research assistant was found, rearranged. Rearranged? Molecularly. They are alive, but their memory proteins have been shuffled. They can't remember anything about our investigation. Zorax felt a cold sensation in his thorax. Are you suggesting Earth is responsible? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you to stop. Whatever this is, it's not worth it. Krell's form trembled. This communication is already too long. Forget about the humans and their diplomatic quirks, Ambassador. These for both our sakes. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Zorax staring at empty space. He remained motionless for several moments, processing what he'd heard. Computer, he finally said, delete all records of this communication and any references to my investigation into Earth's military practices. Confirmed, the computer replied. All records deleted. Zorax exhaled through his spiracles. Perhaps it was better to let this matter drop after all. Absolutely not, Zorax said the next morning, pacing his office furiously. I will not be intimidated. Plix watched with concern from the doorway. Ambassador, if Agent Krell advised caution, Krell advised fear. There's a difference. Zorax gestured emphatically with his upper appendages. Something is happening, Plix. Something important. And now I know I'm right. Because someone might be watching Krell? Exactly. If there was nothing to hide, why the surveillance? Why the intimidation? No, this confirms my suspicions. Which are? Earth is hiding something significant about their military. Something they don't want the Concord to know. Zorax clicked his mandibles decisively. And I'm going to find out what it is. How? If Krell couldn't. Krell relied on data, records, reports. Zorax's eyes gleamed with determination. I'm going to use a more direct approach. Captain Nix of Earth's diplomatic security detail checked her watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The Galactic Concord reception was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes, and Ambassador Jackson was still finalizing her notes for tomorrow's opening statements. "Anything suspicious?" asked Lieutenant Riley, scanning the ornate reception hall of the Grand Stellar Hotel, where delegates from 27 species mingled, forming ever-shifting patterns of color and sound. "Define suspicious," Nix replied dryly. "We have got beings that breathe methane, eat radiation, and communicate through color changes all in one room. Everything is suspicious by human standards." Riley grinned. "Fair point. But you know what I mean. Nothing out of the ordinary. Standard security protocols are in place. The Zetulians have positioned their guards at all exits, as usual. The Vraxians are doing their dominance displays near the buffet, and Ambassador Zorax of the Concord has been staring at us for the past 20 minutes. Zorax? The summit organizer? The very same. Nix nodded subtly toward the far corner where the insectoid ambassador stood, his three eyes unmistakably focused in their direction. Any idea why? Nope. But he's been asking questions about our delegation, specifically why we never bring military representatives. Riley raised an eyebrow. That old issue again? I thought we settled that years ago. Apparently not to everyone's satisfaction. Nix straightened as she spotted Ambassador Jackson entering the hall. Heads up. Boss is here. Keep an eye on Zorax. I don't like how interested he suddenly is in our protocols. Zorax watched the human security personnel from across the reception hall, noting their positioning, their alertness, their constant communication through discreet earpieces. They were professional, certainly. But military? He couldn't tell. Humans all looked so similar to his eyes, despite their varying colorations and sizes. Ambassador Zorax, how delightful to see you again. The voice came from behind him, causing him to startle slightly before he composed himself and turned. Ambassador Jackson, he greeted the human female. The pleasure is mine. Taya Jackson stood before him, resplendent in formal diplomatic attire, a blue outfit humans called a suit, adorned with small symbols of Earth's various nations. Her dark skin contrasted pleasingly with the silver jewelry at her neck and wrists. I understand you have been asking about our delegation, she said, her tone friendly but her eyes sharp and assessing. Zorax felt his spiracles constrict slightly. How had she heard about his inquiries so quickly? Merely procedural questions, Ambassador, ensuring all protocols are properly observed. Of course, she smiled in that enigmatic human way. Anything specific I can clarify? We wouldn't want any misunderstandings before tomorrow's opening sessions. This was his chance. Direct approach, just as he'd planned. Actually, yes, I have noticed that Earth never sends military representatives to these summits. It's unusual. Ah, that old question, Jackson laughed lightly. I sometimes forget how unique Earth's approach seems to our galactic friends. It's quite simple, really. In our system, civilian leadership maintains complete oversight of military matters. Our diplomatic corps represents all aspects of our government, including defense interests. Yet every other species brings military personnel, Zorax pressed. The Vraxians, the Zetulians, even the Lumarians. It's traditional. Expected. Jackson's smile didn't waver, and Earth respects those traditions. We simply have our own. Some might interpret absence as having something to hide, Zorax said, watching her reaction carefully. The human ambassador's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. That would be an unfortunate misinterpretation, Ambassador. Earth hides nothing. We are an open book. Yet, when inquiries are made about your military structure, those making such inquiries find themselves observed, intimidated. Now her smile did fade. That's a serious accusation, Ambassador. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Zorax said, echoing Krell's words from earlier. I'm simply noting patterns, asking questions. Isn't that what diplomacy is about? Understanding each other better? Indeed it is, Jackson replied, her voice cooler now. And in that spirit of understanding, let me be clear, Earth's diplomatic practices are its own. We follow Concord protocols where required and maintain our sovereignty where permitted. If you have specific concerns about our delegation's composition, I invite you to raise them formally during tomorrow's administrative session. Perhaps I will, Zorax said, his mandibles clicking softly. Wonderful. I look forward to it. Jackson's smile returned, professional and distant. Now, if you will excuse me, I should greet the Zetulian delegation. Have a pleasant evening, Ambassador. Zorax watched her walk away, noting how immediately her security detail adjusted their positions to maintain optimal coverage. Civilian security, they claimed, but their movements, their awareness, their coordination, it all seemed very military. Military. The mystery deepened, and Zorax's determination grew. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would force the issue in front of the entire summit. Let's see how Earth explains itself with 26 other species watching. He's going to make a formal complaint, Captain Nix reported, standing at attention in Ambassador Jackson's suite later that evening, about our lack of military representation. Jackson sighed, removing her formal jewelry and placing it carefully in its case. I was afraid of that. He was quite persistent at the reception. What do you want us to do? The ambassador considered for a moment. Nothing for now. Let's see what he does tomorrow. And if he pushes the issue, then we will deal with it as we always have. Jackson's expression grew serious. Protocol Sigma 9 remains in effect. No military personnel are to be identified as such. No discussion of Earth's defense capabilities beyond what's in the public briefings. Yes, Ambassador. And Captain? Ma'am? Have Lieutenant Riley run a security sweep of our quarters. If Ambassador Zorax is asking these questions now, after 6 previous summits without issue, something has changed. I want to know what. Yes, ma'am. Nix turned to leave, then paused. Do you think he knows? About the real reason? Ambassador Jackson's expression was unreadable. No one knows the real reason, Captain. And that's how it's going to stay. The next morning, as delegates filed into the Grand Chamber for the summit's opening session, Zorax felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. He had prepared his statement carefully, framing his concerns about Earth's delegation as a matter of procedural consistency rather than accusation. The chamber itself was a marvel of interspecies design, with seating arrangements accommodating everything from methane breathers to silicon-based life forms, and from massive multi-limbed beings to microscopic collective organisms housed in mechanical suits. At the center was the summit circle, where speakers would address the gathered representatives. As the session began, Zorax waited for the traditional opening formalities to conclude the welcome address from the host species, the Lumarians this time. The roll call of delegations, the ritual acknowledgement of past peace agreements. Finally, Lumarian High Speaker Shimmersong announced, "We now open the floor for administrative matters before proceeding to the primary agenda." This was his moment. Zorax raised his speaking beacon, signaling his desire to address the summit. The chair recognizes Ambassador Zorax of the Galactic Concord, Shimmersong announced, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with formal acknowledgement. Zorax moved to the summit circle, feeling the eyes of 27 species upon him. He positioned himself with formal precision, his 6 legs in the traditional stance of respectful address. Honorable delegates, he began, I bring before this distinguished assembly a matter of procedural consistency. As he spoke, outlining Earth's persistent deviation from summit protocols regarding military representation, he noticed Ambassador Jackson watching him calmly, but showing no signs of discomfort or concern. Her security detail, however, seemed more alert than usual. And so, Zorax concluded, I formally request that Earth explain this consistent deviation and either adjust their delegation composition to include military representation or provide a compelling reason for exemption from this long-standing protocol. A murmur ran through the assembly as Zorax returned to his position. Some delegates seemed surprised by the challenge, others intrigued. The Vraxian War Supreme actually let out a grunt of approval. High Speaker Shimmersong's colors shifted to a pattern indicating deliberation before they spoke. The summit acknowledges Ambassador Zorax's procedural question. Ambassador Jackson of Earth, do you wish to respond? All eyes turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Jackson rose gracefully and approached the summit circle. Honorable delegates, she began, her voice clear and confident. Earth thanks Ambassador Zorax for his attention to protocol and his diligence in maintaining the traditions of these important summits. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. However, I must respectfully remind the Assembly that while military representation is indeed customary, it is not mandatory according to Summit Charter Section 7, Paragraph 3, which states that delegations shall be composed according to each member's governmental structures and diplomatic traditions. Zorax felt his mandibles twitch in frustration. She was using the charter against him. Earth's tradition, Jackson continued, places civilian oversight at the forefront of all diplomatic engagements, including those involving security matters. This is not secrecy. This is not evasion. This is simply our way. Another murmur ran through the Assembly, this one less certain. Several delegates appeared to be consulting their charter documents. If I may add, Jackson said, her tone shifting subtly, I find it curious that after 6 successful summits without issue, this matter is suddenly raised as a formal complaint. One might wonder what has prompted such scrutiny. She looked directly at Zorax, and for a moment he felt as if those human eyes could see right through his exoskeleton. High Speaker Shimmersong's colors shifted to a questioning pattern. Ambassador Zorax, do you wish to respond to Earth's statement? Zorax hesitated. This wasn't going as planned. He'd hoped to put Earth on the defensive, but somehow he now felt like the one being questioned. I simply seek consistency, he managed, aware that his voice sounded less confident now. All other species bring military representatives. Why should Earth be different? Perhaps, Ambassador Jackson replied smoothly, the question isn't why Earth is different, but why everyone else is the same. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this statement. After all, Jackson continued into the silence, these are peace summits. Yet we surround ourselves with military personnel as if expecting conflict at any moment. Earth chooses a different symbol, one of civilian leadership and diplomatic priority. Is that truly so threatening? Zorax felt the attention of the chamber shift from him to her, and he knew he was losing control of the situation. I withdraw my complaint, he said stiffly. Earth may continue its traditions. Thank you, Ambassador, Jackson replied with a gracious nod. Earth appreciates your understanding. As she returned to her seat, Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something he didn't fully understand. The matter appeared settled, but the mystery remained. Why was Earth so adamant about keeping their military separate from these gatherings? What were they hiding? And most importantly, who was watching him now that he'd asked these questions publicly? Zorax couldn't sleep. The summit's opening day had concluded hours ago, but his mind kept replaying Ambassador Jackson's words. Perhaps the question isn't why Earth is different, but why everyone else is the same. He tossed restlessly in his hibernation pod, the temperature regulation failing to soothe his agitated nervous system. There was something about the humans, something he was missing. After 6 peace summits, why did they still maintain this peculiar stance? And why did he care so much? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Someone was at his door at this late hour? Identity. Zorax called out. Lieutenant Riley, Earth Diplomatic Security, came the response. Zorax froze. An Earth security officer? Here? Now? Had his questioning gone too far? Were they here to, what? Threaten him? Worse? With a nervous click of his mandibles, he activated the door. Enter. Enter. The human male who stepped into Zorax's chamber was tall, lean, and moved with a fluid grace that reminded Zorax of predator species. His expression was neutral, professional. Ambassador Zorax, I apologize for the late hour, Riley said. his voice low and measured. But this matter couldn't wait until morning. What matter? Zorax asked, his limbs instinctively shifting into a defensive posture. Riley seemed to notice this and deliberately relaxed his own stance. Ambassador Jackson would like to speak with you. Privately. Regarding your questions from today's session. At this hour? Yes, sir. She feels this conversation would be better conducted away from the summit's attentive ears. Zorax's antennae twitched with suspicion. And if I decline? Then I leave. And nothing changes, Riley said simply. This isn't a demand, Ambassador. It's an invitation, one that might answer some of your questions. Curiosity warred with caution in Zorax's mind. This could be a trap, or it could be the revelation he'd been seeking. Give me a moment to prepare, he finally said. Riley nodded. Of course. I will wait outside. 5 minutes later, Zorax followed the human through the dimly lit corridors of the summit complex. Most delegates were in their rest cycles, leaving the halls eerily quiet. Riley moved with silent efficiency, occasionally pausing to check corners or wait for automated security patrols to pass. Your security measures seem quite thorough, Zorax observed, breaking the silence. Standard procedure, Riley replied without elaboration. For civilian security personnel. Zorax pressed. Riley glanced back, a small smile on his face. For anyone responsible for protecting diplomats, Ambassador. They reached a section of the complex Zorax recognized as the Earth delegation's assigned quarters. Riley led him to a small conference room rather than Ambassador Jackson's personal suite. The doors slid open silently, revealing Jackson seated at a round table, a data tablet before her. Captain Nix stood near the window, her posture alert but relaxed. Ambassador Zorax. Jackson greeted him, gesturing to a seat adapted for his species' physiology. Thank you for coming at this unusual hour. Your invitation was intriguing, Zorax replied, carefully settling his 6 limbs into the seat. Though I remain curious about its purpose. Jackson smiled. Directness. I appreciate that. She tapped the data tablet, activating a small device on the table. A soft hum filled the room, and the lights dimmed slightly. Privacy field, she explained. What we discuss now won't leave this room. Zorax felt his spiracles tighten with anticipation. So there is something to hide after all. Not hide, Ambassador. Protect. Jackson leaned forward. You have been asking about Earth's military absence at these summits. Persistently. Publicly. It's attracted attention. From whom? From everyone. Including some whose attention you don't want. Zorax's antennae stiffened. Is that a threat, Ambassador? No, she said firmly. It's a warning. And possibly an opportunity. For what? For understanding. Jackson exchanged glances with Captain Nix, who gave a subtle nod. You asked why Earth never brings military representatives to these summits. The official answer is what I gave today: civilian oversight, diplomatic tradition. That answer is true, but incomplete. I knew it, Zorax said, his mandibles clicking with vindication. The complete answer is more complicated, Jackson continued, and potentially dangerous to know and to tell. Yet you are willing to tell me now? Why? Because your public questioning has forced our hand. Jackson's expression grew serious. And because we have been monitoring your inquiries, Ambassador, your conversation with Agent Krell, your deleted files. Your persistence suggests a mind that won't be satisfied with partial truths. Zorax felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. They'd been watching him that closely? You are right that Earth is the only species that doesn't bring military personnel to these summits, Jackson said. But you are wrong about why that matters. Enlighten me. Jackson tapped her tablet again, and a holographic display appeared above the table, a rotating image of the summit complex. This facility houses representatives from 27 different species, each with their own security concerns, cultural sensitivities, and biological requirements. The image zoomed in, highlighting different sections. The Vraxians require additional security due to historical conflicts with the Zetulians. The Lumerians need specialized atmospheric controls. The Krith collective must be kept separate from the Volmari due to electromagnetic interference issues. These are basic diplomatic accommodations, Zorax said, uncertain where this was leading. Yes, accommodations made for differences. Biological, cultural, technological. Jackson deactivated the display. Now tell me, Ambassador, what accommodations have ever been made for humans at these summits? The question caught Zorax off guard. None that I recall. Humans are adaptable. You eat most standard food supplies, breathe oxygen-nitrogen atmospheres like many species, tolerate common temperature ranges. Exactly. We are seen as requiring no special treatment. Jackson's smile returned, but there was something different in it, now something almost predatory. And therein lies the answer to your question. I don't understand. Earth doesn't bring military representatives to peace summits, Ambassador Zorax, because if we did, there wouldn't be peace summits. Zorax stared at her, confusion evident in his posture. You suggest your military is so aggressive? Threatening? Captain Nix laughed, a sharp sound in the quiet room. No, Ambassador. She's saying the opposite. The truth, Jackson said, leaning back in her chair, is that humans are uniquely qualified for diplomacy in ways other species aren't. Ways that would become immediately apparent if we brought our military representatives. How so? Tell me, Ambassador, what's the primary function of military personnel at these summits? Zorax considered the question. To represent defense interests, to provide security expertise, to engage with other military officials on matters of shared concern. And what's the secondary function? Jackson pressed. The unspoken one? I'm not sure what you mean. Posturing, Riley interjected from his position by the door. Size comparison. Threat assessment. Precisely, Jackson nodded. Every delegation brings their military not just for practical purposes, but for psychological ones. To show strength. To establish position in the unspoken hierarchy of the summit. That's natural, Zorax argued. All species engage in some form of status signaling. All species except humans, Jackson corrected. At least, not in the way you think. She tapped the tablet again, and a new holographic image appeared, complex neural scans of various species, labeled with their names. These are standard neurological profiles of the dominant species in the Concord, including humans. Zorax leaned forward, studying the intricate patterns. His scientific training allowed him to recognize certain similarities and differences, but nothing immediately significant stood out. Now, Jackson said, let me show you these same scans when the subjects are presented with potential threats. The images shifted, and now Zorax could see dramatic changes in the neural activity patterns, areas lighting up, others dimming, complex cascades of responses. Notice anything? Jackson asked. Zorax studied the images carefully, then jolted with sudden understanding. The human pattern, it's almost identical to the threat assessment patterns of the Vraxians, the Zetulians, and the Goral. And those three species are? Jackson prompted. The Concord's most aggressive military powers, Zorax replied automatically. But that doesn't make sense. Humans are not particularly aggressive by galactic standards. Your conflicts are mostly internal, your space presence minimal compared to the major powers. That's because we have learned to control it, Captain Nix said quietly. To channel it. Jackson nodded. Human neural architecture evolved for threat assessment, pattern recognition, and strategic response at a level matched only by the apex predator species of the Concord. But unlike them, we developed in isolation, forced to turn those capabilities inward as often as outward. I still don't see why this prevents military representation, Zorax said, though a suspicion was beginning to form. Because, Jackson said, human military personnel are trained specifically to enhance these natural capabilities. Their threat assessment metrics are off the charts by Concord standards. Put simply, Ambassador, they notice everything. Everything? Weaknesses, vulnerabilities, strategic advantages, tactical opportunities. Jackson's expression grew solemn. A human military officer in a room with the war supreme of the Vraxian Empire would automatically catalog 17 different ways to incapacitate them, not out of aggression, but out of instinct. Hardwired evolutionary response, training. EAD. And this would be visible? Zorax asked, skeptical. To other military personnel? Absolutely. Riley stepped forward. Military leaders are trained to read such assessments in others. The Vraxian War Supreme would sense the human's analysis, misinterpret it as aggressive intent, and respond accordingly. Cascading threat escalation, Jackson concluded. Within hours, the peace summit would transform into a strategic standoff. Zorax's antennae twitched rapidly as he processed this information. This seems exaggerated. Surely your military can suppress such instincts in diplomatic settings? We could send officers with minimal training, Jackson acknowledged. But that would defeat the purpose of sending our best representatives. And if we did send our best, she trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. There's a bigger problem, Captain Nix added. Most species military officers exchange some form of respect ritual at these summits. For the Vraxians, it's their dominance display. For the Zetulians, their honor guard demonstration. Standard protocol, Zorax agreed. And what would happen, Nix asked, if these displays were met not with the expected deference, but with a human military officer's instinctive strategic analysis? With our capability to immediately identify the critical vulnerabilities in each display. Zorax finally understood. They would see it as a counter-challenge, as disrespect. Worse, Jackson said, they would see it as a threat. Because to an apex predator species, knowledge of vulnerability is power. And shared power is a threat to dominance. Silence fell over the room as Zorax absorbed the implications. This is why you maintain the civilian oversight explanation. It's diplomatically convenient, Jackson admitted. And technically true. But the deeper truth is that Earth's absence of military representation isn't a sign of weakness or secrecy. It's an accommodation we make for everyone else's benefit. A peace summit with human military present wouldn't be peaceful, Riley said bluntly. So instead, Jackson continued, we send diplomats with specialized training in cross-species communication, cultural attaches who understand the nuances of interspecies protocol, security personnel who are taught to protect, not assess for weakness. And this has been the case for all 6 summits? Zorax asked. Since the very first, when we learned our lesson the hard way, Jackson said. The initial meeting between Earth's Joint Chiefs and the Vraxian War Command almost ended in bloodshed. Both sides walked away convinced the other was planning an imminent attack. We have kept our military separate from galactic diplomacy ever since, Nix added. It's better for everyone. Zorax sat back, his mind racing with new understanding. And your inquiries about my investigation? The surveillance of Agent Krell? Standard protocol when someone starts asking questions that could reveal this particular truth, Jackson said. We didn't harm Krell, merely discouraged further investigation. There are species in the Concord who would use this information against Earth or worse, against their rivals by manipulating contexts to force confrontations. I see. Zorax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. So Earth's apparent deviation from protocol is actually a different kind of protocol, Jackson finished for him, one designed to maintain peace rather than simply discuss it. This is not what I expected, Zorax admitted. The truth rarely is, Jackson smiled. Now you understand why this conversation needed privacy. What happens now? Zorax asked. Do you expect me to keep this secret? To withdraw my concerns permanently? What happens now is up to you, Ambassador, Jackson said. We have trusted you with the truth because we believe you value genuine understanding over protocol for its own sake. What you do with that understanding is your choice. Zorax considered his options. The revelation was extraordinary. Humans, seemingly the most adaptable and diplomatic species in the Concord, but possessed natural capabilities that made them potentially more dangerous in diplomatic settings than the recognized military powers. It was both fascinating and disturbing. "I have one more question," he said finally. "If humans possess these capabilities naturally, why aren't Earth's civilian diplomats equally problematic? Surely they have the same neural architecture." "An excellent question," Jackson smiled. "And the answer is simple: specialization. Human military training enhances these natural capabilities to exceptional levels. Our diplomats undergo different training focused on empathy, communication, de-escalation. We are adaptable, remember? We can channel our instincts in many directions." She gestured to herself and her team. "Everyone in Earth's diplomatic corps has undergone extensive training to suppress threat assessment instincts and enhance cooperative ones. We are not unarmed, we are differently armed." Zorax stood, his decision made. "I will withdraw my procedural questions permanently, and I will ensure no record of this conversation exists in Concord archives." "Thank you, Ambassador," Jackson said, rising as well. "Earth appreciates your understanding." "Not understanding," Zorax corrected. "Wisdom. There is a difference between knowing protocol and knowing when to set it aside." As Riley escorted him back to his quarters, Zorax found himself seeing the summit complex through new eyes. The careful positioning of delegation chambers, the scheduled timing of species interactions, the meticulous management of shared spaces, all designed to minimize conflict between naturally competing species. And within this delicate balance, humans had found their role not by showcasing their strength, but by concealing it. By understanding that sometimes the most powerful presence in a room is the one that doesn't need to be recognized as such. Back in his chamber, Zorax composed a brief message to Plix, instructing his assistant to cancel all further inquiries into Earth's delegation practices. Then he prepared a formal withdrawal of his procedural complaint for the next day's session. As he finally settled into his hibernation pod, one thought kept circling in his mind: how many other accommodations in the complex diplomatic dance of the Concord remained hidden? How many other species maintained their own careful balancing acts for the sake of shared peace? Perhaps that was the real lesson here. Peace wasn't the natural state of intelligent species, it was the artificial one, carefully constructed and maintained through understanding, compromise, and sometimes in strategic absence. Zorax made a note to observe Earth's delegates more carefully during the remaining summit days. Not with suspicion this time, but with appreciation for the subtle art they practiced, the art of seeming ordinary while being anything but. The summit concluded 8 days later with new trade agreements, security protocols, and cultural exchange programs established between the 27 member species. By all measures, it was the most successful gathering in the history of the Concord. As delegations prepared to depart, Zorax found himself standing beside Ambassador Jackson in the main hangar, watching various species board their vessels. "A productive week," he observed. "Very," she agreed. "The new deep space monitoring network will benefit everyone." "Indeed." Zorax hesitated, then added, "I have been meaning to ask your security captain, Nix. Her background seems interesting." Jackson's expression revealed nothing. "How so?" "Her threat assessment capabilities appear quite advanced for civilian security." A small smile touched Jackson's lips. "Captain Nix has extensive experience in diplomatic protection, but not military experience?" "Ambassador," Jackson said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement, "Earth doesn't bring military representatives to peace summits. You know that." "Of course," Zorax replied, his mandibles clicking in what humans might recognize as a grin. "How could I forget?" As Earth's delegation boarded their modest transport vessel, Zorax watched Captain Nix oversee the loading process. Her movements were efficient, her gaze constantly scanning the hangar, her positioning always optimal for both observation and response. Just civilian security training, they claimed. Zorax had his doubts. But then again, perhaps the lines between civilian and military weren't as clear on Earth as they were for other species. Perhaps that blurring was itself another accommodation, another way humans adapted to fit into the complex tapestry of galactic society. Whatever the truth, Zorax was certain of one thing: he would never again underestimate the complexity behind Earth's apparent simplicity. Sometimes the most ordinary-seeming species were the most extraordinary of all. And sometimes, true power lay not in displaying strength, but in knowing when to keep it hidden.